The Death World. One stolen child, one furious human commander. HFY clicked his mandibles in satisfaction as he reviewed the latest batch of specimens collected from the Rim worlds. The Galactic Empire's expansion program required fresh subjects for their labor colonies, and the outer systems always provided interesting candidates. Sir, we have collected 347 specimens from the latest raids, his subordinate reported through the ship's communication system. Most are from the usual slave worlds, but we have something unusual. HFY's 4 eyes swiveled toward the display screen. Elaborate. A specimen from the restricted world designated Terra 3. The locals call it Earth. The commander's antennae twitched with interest. Terra 3 was classified as a Class 3 death world, supposedly uninhabitable by any civilized species. The radiation levels, gravity, atmospheric composition, and native predators made it a nightmare realm that even the Empire avoided. Yet somehow, primitive bipeds had evolved there and thrived. How did one of those creatures end up in our cargo hold? The specimen was traveling on a civilian transport that we intercepted near the Kepler station. A small human child, approximately 7 standard years old according to our scans. The transport's manifest listed her as Sarah Chen, traveling with her parents to the research facility on Proxima 4. HFY accessed the file on his personal terminal. The creature looked harmless enough, small, soft-skinned, with the typical mammalian features of a deathworlder. Brown hair, dark eyes, wearing some kind of colorful garment that appeared to serve no protective function whatsoever. And the parents? Eliminated during the raid, as per standard protocol. They attempted to resist and were dealt with accordingly. The commander nodded approvingly. The Empire had learned long ago that separating families made specimens more compliant. Without emotional anchors, most species adapted quickly to their new roles as laborers, servants, or entertainment. Assign the Deathworlder to Sector 7 of the mining operation on Corvax Prime. Let's see how these humans perform under real working conditions. 3 days later, the massive slave transport arrived at Corvax Prime, a barren world rich in rare minerals that powered the Empire's war machines. The mining complex stretched across the planet's surface like a mechanical infection, with thousands of different alien species working in harsh conditions under the supervision of Imperial guards. Sarah Chen was processed along with the other new arrivals. The automated systems fitted her with a neural compliance collar, a translation implant, and the standard gray work uniform that marked her as property of the Empire. Her small hands shook as the medical drones ran their scans, but she remained silent. The processing officer, a lizard-like Vraxian, looked down at the readout with confusion. This can't be right. The atmospheric readings show the creature should have suffocated within minutes of leaving its homeworld. "Run the scan again," ordered his supervisor, a hulking Gordanian with cybernetic implants covering half his face. The second scan produced identical results. According to every medical database in the Empire, humans required an atmospheric composition that was found on exactly one world in the known galaxy, Earth. Yet this small specimen was breathing normally in the standard ship atmosphere that supported 90% of known spacefaring species. "Deathworlders," the Gordanian muttered, making a gesture of warding with his mechanical arm. "They adapt to anything. No wonder their planet is restricted." Sarah was assigned to Mining Team 7, working alongside a group of Centaurian refugees who had been enslaved 3 years earlier. The team leader, an elderly Centaurian named Veltar, took one look at the human child and felt his 4 hearts sink. The mines were no place for any child, much less one from a species none of them had ever seen before. "Stay close to me, little one," he whispered in the common trade language as they descended into the dark tunnels. "The overseers don't care about age or size. You work or you die." Sarah nodded wordlessly. She had not spoken since watching her parents die aboard the transport ship. The trauma had locked her voice away, but her mind remained sharp and observant. The mining operation was brutal beyond imagination. Teams worked 18-hour shifts, extracting crystalline ore from deep underground caverns. The atmosphere was thick with toxic dust. The gravity was nearly twice Earth normal, and the temperature fluctuated between freezing and scalding, depending on the depth of the tunnels. Within hours, most of the new arrivals were gasping for breath, their bodies struggling to adapt to the harsh conditions. Several collapsed and were dragged away by the mechanical overseers. No one asked what happened to them. But Sarah Chen, daughter of Earth, descendant of a species that had conquered the most hostile planet in the known galaxy, simply kept working. Veltar watched in amazement as the small human lifted ore chunks that should have been impossible for her size. Her breathing remained steady even in the toxic atmosphere. When they reached the deeper levels where the gravity increased to 3 times standard, she adapted within minutes, while others needed hours or days. "What are you?" he whispered during one of their brief rest periods. Sarah looked up at him with those dark eyes that seemed far too old for her age. For the first time in days, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper through the translation implant. "I'm from Earth." Word of the unusual human spread quickly through the slave population. Stories began to circulate of a child who could work longer than adults, who never seemed to tire, who could survive in conditions that killed others within hours. The guards dismissed these tales as typical slave gossip, but Veltar knew better. He had lived through the Centaurian Wars, had seen his homeworld burned by Imperial forces, had watched his people broken and scattered across the galaxy. In all that time, he had never seen anything that gave him hope. Until now. On the 15th day of Sarah's captivity, disaster struck Mining Team 7. A tunnel collapse trapped 12 workers in a section where the air recyclers had failed. The toxic atmosphere would kill them within an hour, but the mechanical overseers calculated that a rescue operation would be more expensive than simply replacing the workers. The trapped miners resigned themselves to death, but Veltar had an idea. "Sarah," he called to the human child, "can you breathe without the air mask?" She nodded silently. The atmosphere that would dissolve the lungs of most species was merely unpleasant to someone whose ancestors had evolved on a world where the air itself was a weapon. "The emergency beacon is in that tunnel. If someone could reach it and activate the distress signal, the overseers would be forced to send a rescue team. The insurance costs would be too high otherwise." Sarah looked at the collapsed tunnel entrance, calculating distances and risks with the cold logic of a survival instinct honed over millions of years of evolution on humanity's death world. Without hesitation, she stripped off her breathing apparatus and squeezed through a gap in the rubble that no adult could navigate. The journey through the collapsed tunnel should have killed her instantly. The atmosphere was pure poison, the temperature was below freezing, and sharp crystal formations jutted from every surface. But Sarah Chen was human, and humans were the product of a world that had tried every possible method of killing them for millions of years. She reached the beacon and activated the emergency signal just as her oxygen-starved brain began to shut down. When the rescue team found her 3 hours later, she was unconscious but alive, her body having instinctively shifted into a survival mode that would have been impossible for any other known species. The incident was officially recorded as an equipment malfunction that resulted in no significant losses. But in the slave quarters, the story spread like wildfire. The human child had done the impossible, had survived where others would die, had saved lives that the Empire considered worthless. And somewhere in the vast network of enslaved worlds that powered the Galactic Empire, word began to reach a very specific ear. A communication passed from slave to free trader to information broker to rebel contact finally reached its intended destination. Captain Marcus Chen of the Earth Defense Force received the message while his ship, the Retribution, was on patrol near the outer rim. The former military officer had been searching for his missing daughter for 3 months, following every lead, checking every slave market, bribing every information broker who might have seen a small human child. When he read the report from Korvax Prime, his blood turned to ice. Marcus Chen had served 20 years in Earth's military before retiring to become a research expedition leader. He had fought in the Titan Wars, had survived the assault on the asteroid belt pirates, had been decorated for valor during the defense of Luna Colony. He was a quiet man who preferred books to battles, science to conflict. But he was also human, and someone had taken his daughter. The Empire was about to learn why Earth was classified as a restricted death world, and why humanity had never been conquered despite having only one inhabited planet. They had stolen one child from one human. That was going to be the most expensive mistake in their history. The death world. One stolen child, one furious human. The retribution hung in the void between stars, its black hull nearly invisible against the cosmic darkness. Captain Marcus Chen stood on the bridge, studying tactical displays that showed the Korvax system in precise detail. Intelligence gathered over the past 6 weeks painted a clear picture of the Imperial mining operation where his daughter was being held. "Captain," his tactical officer reported, "we've received confirmation from our contacts on the surface. The human child is alive and working in Sector 7 of the mining complex." Marcus nodded without taking his eyes from the display. The past month and a half had been a nightmare of careful planning and desperate preparation. Earth's government had officially disavowed any knowledge of his mission. Humanity's first rule of survival was to never attract attention from the galactic powers. But unofficially, certain resources had become available to a father searching for his stolen child. "Status report on the ship modifications?" "Engineering teams finished the final installations yesterday," his chief engineer responded through the comm system. "All weapon systems have been upgraded with Terran spec components. Hull plating has been reinforced with materials from the Luna foundries. The new reactor core is operating at optimal efficiency." Marcus smiled grimly. The Retribution had begun its journey as a standard civilian exploration vessel. After 6 weeks of modifications using technology that Earth preferred to keep secret from the galaxy at large, it was now something that would give Imperial Navy commanders nightmares. "And our crew status?" 43 volunteers, all former military with experience in hostile environment operations. Every one of them has family that could just as easily have been on that transport ship. The captain felt a surge of pride at that report. When word had spread through Earth's veteran community about the mission, volunteers had appeared faster than he could process them. Marines who had fought in the asteroid wars, pilots who had defended the outer colonies, engineers who had built humanity's first starships, all of them ready to face the might of the Galactic Empire to bring home one lost child. Meanwhile, on Korvax Prime, Sarah Chen had become something of a legend among the slave population. Word of her survival in the collapsed tunnel had spread through every mining sector, and with each retelling the story grew. Some claimed she could breathe poison gas. Others swore she could see in absolute darkness. A few insisted she was immune to the effects of gravity and radiation. The truth was both simpler and more terrifying than the rumors suggested. Sarah was simply human, and humans were the product of evolutionary pressures that had created the most adaptable species the galaxy had ever seen. Guard Commander Thekalon had begun to take notice of the unusual prisoner. His reports to Imperial headquarters described anomalous behavior patterns and survival capabilities that defied standard biological models. The response from his superiors was predictable: increase security protocols and prepare for enhanced interrogation sessions to determine the source of the specimen's abilities. "Bring the Death Worlder to Laboratory Complex 5, Theklon ordered his subordinates. "The research division wants to run comprehensive tests." Sarah was escorted from the mines by a squad of heavily armed guards to a sterile white facility that reeked of antiseptic and fear. Medical drones hummed through the corridors while alien scientists in protective suits observed other prisoners who had been selected for research purposes. Dr. Yilmoth, the facility's chief xenobiologist, examined Sarah's file with professional interest. "A specimen from Terra 3, remarkable. We've had standing orders to acquire deathworld samples for analysis. But the opportunity has never presented itself." The examination began with standard medical scans, but the results defied every biological model in the Imperial database. Sarah's cellular structure showed adaptations that should have been impossible. Organs that could process multiple atmospheric compositions, muscles that responded to variable gravity by adjusting their density, a nervous system that could operate efficiently across a range of environmental conditions that would kill most known species. "This is impossible," muttered Dr. Yilmoth as he reviewed the data. "No single species can possess this level of adaptability. The energy requirements alone should prevent such evolutionary development." What he didn't understand, and what no non-human in the galaxy truly comprehended, was the nature of Earth's evolutionary pressure. While other worlds had developed stable ecosystems where species found comfortable niches, Earth had spent billions of years trying to murder everything that lived on it. Ice ages, volcanic epochs, mass extinctions, atmospheric changes. The planet had thrown every possible catastrophe at its children. The species that survived were those that could adapt to anything. As the tests continued, Sarah endured procedures that would have broken the minds of most sentient beings: pain tolerance evaluations, atmospheric composition experiments, gravitational stress tests, all conducted with the cold efficiency that the Empire applied to all their research subjects. But Sarah Chen was the daughter of explorers who had chosen to raise their child on research expeditions across hostile worlds. She had learned to endure hardship before she could walk, had developed mental resilience that surprised even her captors. And through it all, she waited. Some deep instinct told her that rescue would come. Her father was Marcus Chen, who had once held off an entire pirate fleet to protect a colony ship. Her mother had been Dr. Lisa Chen, who had discovered 3 new methods of terraforming hostile environments. They had raised her to be strong, to be smart, and to never give up hope. The Empire had made a mistake when they killed her parents. They had made a bigger mistake when they took her, and they were about to discover that the biggest mistake of all was underestimating what humans would do to protect their children. 6 weeks after Sarah's capture, long-range sensors on Korvax Prime detected an approaching vessel. The ship registered as a civilian exploration craft, probably a free trader looking for mining contracts or salvage opportunities. The Imperial Defense Network logged the contact and forgot about it. That was their first mistake. The Retribution approached the Korvax system along a trajectory that avoided the main shipping lanes and military patrol routes. Marcus had spent 20 years studying Imperial tactics and formations. He knew exactly how they thought, how they operated, and most importantly, where they were weak. "Passive sensors show 14 Imperial vessels in the system," his sensor operator reported. 3 heavy cruisers, 7 destroyers, and 4 patrol boats. Standard mining operation security. "Any sign they've detected us?" "Negative, sir. We're running silent and our hull modifications are keeping us off their sensors." Marcus nodded. The Retribution had been equipped with technology that Earth had developed during their long isolation from galactic civilization. Stealth systems based on principles that most alien species couldn't even comprehend, weapons that violated several interstellar treaties, and defensive capabilities that would horrify the galactic community. Earth had learned long ago that in a galaxy full of predators, the best defense was to make sure that attacking humanity was too expensive to consider. "Take us to attack position Alpha," Marcus ordered. "All hands to battle stations." Warning lights bathed the ship in red as the crew prepared for combat. These were veterans who had fought desperate battles against impossible odds, who had learned to turn humanity's greatest weakness, their single inhabited world, into their greatest strength. When you only had one planet to defend, you learned to make attacking it cost more than any enemy was willing to pay. The Retribution moved through the outer system like a ghost, its advanced sensors mapping every Imperial position while remaining invisible to their detection systems. Marcus studied the tactical display with the cold precision of a predator selecting its prey. Weapon status? All systems optimal, Captain. Kinetic bombardment arrays are loaded with tungsten penetrators. Plasma lance batteries are charged and ready. Point defense systems are online. Communications? We're ready to broadcast on all Imperial frequencies when you give the word. Marcus Chen looked out at the stars and thought about his daughter, alone and afraid on a hostile world, surrounded by beings who saw her as nothing more than a useful tool. He thought about his wife, murdered simply for trying to protect their child. He thought about the thousands of other families who had been torn apart by the Empire's endless hunger for slaves and resources. Then he opened a communication channel to every Imperial vessel in the system. Imperial forces of the Korvax system. This is Captain Marcus Chen of the Terran vessel Retribution. You are holding my daughter prisoner on the mining world below. You have exactly 1 hour to return her unharmed to my ship. This is your only warning. The response from the Imperial commander was predictable. Threats, demands for surrender, promises of slow death for daring to challenge the might of the Empire. Marcus listened to it all with the patience of someone who had heard identical speeches from dozens of enemies over the years. When the Imperial commander finished his threats, Marcus replied with just 4 words. Your hour starts now. Then he closed the channel and gave the order that would transform a rescue mission into a demonstration of why Earth was classified as a death world. All weapons, fire at will. At the death world, 1 stolen child, 1 furious human. The first Imperial vessel died before its crew understood they were under attack. The Retribution's opening salvo struck the heavy cruiser Dominator with weapons that the galactic community had never seen before. Tungsten penetrators traveling at relativistic speeds punched through shields and armor as if they were made of paper, while plasma lances designed using principles that violated 3 different interstellar physics treaties turned sections of the ship into expanding clouds of superheated gas. Contact destroyed, the tactical officer reported with professional calm. Remaining Imperial forces are attempting to organize a defensive formation. Marcus watched the display as the enemy fleet scrambled to respond to an attack that defied their understanding of civilian vessel capabilities. The Empire had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years through superior technology and overwhelming force. They had never encountered an enemy that fought with the desperate innovation of a species whose homeworld had spent millions of years trying to kill them. Target the destroyer formation, Marcus ordered. Show them what Death World engineering looks like. The Retribution moved through space with an agility that should have been impossible for a ship its size. Earth's engineers had studied every known propulsion system in the galaxy and then built something that incorporated the best features of each while adding innovations that most species couldn't conceive. The result was a vessel that could outmaneuver fighters while carrying the firepower of a battleship. Admiral Krektos aboard the Imperial flagship Conquest watched his fleet disintegrate with growing horror. In 30 years of service, he had never seen weapons that could penetrate Imperial shields so easily, or a single ship that could engage multiple targets simultaneously without any apparent reduction in effectiveness. All vessels concentrate fire on the enemy ship, he commanded. Deploy fighter squadrons and prepare boarding parties. The response was swift but futile. Imperial plasma cannons that could level cities bounced harmlessly off the Retribution's deflector screens. Fighter squadrons found themselves outgunned by point defense systems that treated their attacks like annoying insects. And the boarding parties never had a chance to launch as their carrier vessels were systematically destroyed by weapons that seemed to bend the laws of physics. Down on Korvax Prime, the mining complex erupted into chaos as explosions lit up the night sky. Guard Commander Thecalon stared at his tactical displays in disbelief as ship after ship vanished from the orbital defense grid. "Sir, we're receiving demands to surrender from the attacking vessel," his communications officer reported. "They want us to release a specific prisoner, the human child from Sector 7. Thecalon's mandibles clicked with nervous energy. In his 50 years of service to the Empire, he had never seen a single ship engage an entire fleet and win. The tactical data streaming from orbit suggested that the attacking vessel possessed technology that was decades ahead of anything in the Imperial arsenal. "Increase security around Laboratory Complex 5, he ordered. "If they want the specimen, they'll have to come down here and take it." That proved to be a fatal miscalculation. Aboard the Retribution, Marcus Chen studied the surface scans with the cold precision of a man planning to retrieve something that belonged to him. The mining complex was heavily defended with ground-based weapons and a garrison of Imperial troops, but Earth's military had extensive experience dealing with fortified positions. "Prepare the drop pods," he commanded. "Full assault configuration." 20 minutes later, 12 pods launched from the Retribution and streaked toward the planet's surface like falling stars. Each pod carried a single human warrior equipped with gear that represented the pinnacle of Earth's military technology. Where most galactic species had developed energy weapons and force shields, humans had taken a different approach. They had learned to turn everything into a weapon. The first pod landed directly on top of the main communications array, and Sergeant Maria Santos emerged wearing powered armor that incorporated technology from a dozen different worlds. Her weapon wasn't a plasma rifle or laser cannon. It was an electromagnetic railgun that fired depleted uranium projectiles at hypersonic velocities. The Imperial guards who tried to stop her discovered that armor designed to deflect energy weapons provided no protection against kinetic rounds traveling at several times the speed of sound. More pods landed across the complex as human warriors began a systematic assault on Imperial positions. They moved with the coordinated precision of predators who had evolved on a world where everything was trying to kill them, using tactics that turned the enemy's superior numbers into a disadvantage. Private Chen, no relation to the captain, disabled the power grid using explosives that had been designed to crack asteroid surfaces. Corporal Williams neutralized the vehicle pool with incendiary charges that burned hot enough to melt titanium. Lieutenant Garcia took control of the ammunition depot and turned the Imperial weapons against their former owners. Within 30 minutes, the most secure mining facility in the sector had been reduced to burning ruins by 12 humans with personal weapons. In Laboratory Complex 5, Sarah Chen listened to the sounds of battle getting closer and felt hope for the first time in weeks. She didn't know who was attacking the facility, but the tactical precision and overwhelming violence suggested Earth military doctrine. Her father had come for her. Dr. Yilmoth and his research team huddled in the laboratory's secure center as explosions rocked the building. "The security forces can't stop them," he reported to Guard Commander Thecalon. "Whatever species this is, they fight like demons." "They're human," Sarah said quietly, speaking for the first time since her capture. "They're from Earth." The alien scientists stared at her in shock. None of them had ever seen a deathworlder before, and they had assumed that Sarah's remarkable survival capabilities were some kind of mutation or experimental enhancement. "That's impossible," Dr. Yilmoth whispered. "Terra 3 is classified as uninhabitable. Nothing intelligent could evolve on a world that hostile." Sarah looked at him with eyes that held the accumulated wisdom of a species that had conquered the most dangerous planet in the known galaxy. Everything on Earth tries to kill you from the day you're born. We learn to fight back. The laboratory's outer defenses fell with mechanical precision as human assault teams cleared room by room. Imperial guards who had thought themselves warriors learned the difference between fighting battles and fighting for survival. Where they had been trained to use standardized tactics against predictable enemies, the humans adapted to each situation with the fluid creativity of a species whose very existence was an act of defiance against an uncaring universe. When the laboratory doors finally exploded inward, Sarah saw her father step through the smoke and debris like an avenging angel. Marcus Chen's armor was scorched and battle-damaged, but his eyes never left his daughter's face as he crossed the room. "Hello, sweetheart," he said softly, cutting through her restraints with a plasma cutter. "I'm sorry I'm late." Sarah threw her arms around him and finally allowed herself to cry. The tears came not from weakness, but from relief. Relief that the long nightmare was over. Relief that her faith in her father had been justified. And relief that she was finally going home. As father and daughter reunited, the last of the Imperial forces on Korvax Prime surrendered to the human assault teams. In orbit, Admiral Krektos, aboard the heavily damaged Conquest, faced a choice between continued resistance and preservation of his remaining crew. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "the enemy vessel is hailing us." Marcus Chen's image appeared on the main screen, his arm around his daughter, while the ruins of the Imperial facility burned behind them. "Admiral, I have what I came for. You have 30 minutes to evacuate your people from this system. Any Imperial vessel still here after that deadline will be destroyed. You cannot simply steal Imperial property and expect no consequences," the Admiral replied, though his voice lacked conviction. "The Empire will hunt you to the ends of the galaxy." Marcus smiled, and there was nothing friendly in that expression. "Admiral, you just learned why Earth is classified as a restricted world. We didn't evolve in a peaceful galaxy where civilized species debate treaties and trade agreements. We evolved on a planet that tried to murder us every single day for millions of years." He gestured to the tactical display showing the wreckage of the Imperial fleet. "This is what happens when you threaten our children. I suggest you share that information with your superiors." The transmission ended, and the Retribution began its journey back to Earth with its precious cargo. Behind them, the survivors of the Imperial fleet faced the humiliating task of reporting their defeat to the Empire's high command. In the weeks that followed, the story of Korvax Prime spread throughout the galaxy like wildfire. A single human ship had defeated an entire Imperial fleet. A handful of human warriors had destroyed the most secure facility in the sector, and all of it had been done to rescue one child. The Empire's response was swift and predictable. Expanded military patrols, increased security protocols, and strict orders to avoid contact with vessels from the Terra system. But the damage had been done. Word had spread that the mysterious Deathworlders were not to be underestimated. On distant slave worlds, in hidden rebel bases, in the forgotten corners of the galaxy where the Empire's victims planned their revenge, the story became a symbol of hope. If one human could challenge the Empire and win, what might happen if they ever decided to act as a species? The Empire had built its power on the assumption that overwhelming force could crush any opposition. They had never encountered a species that viewed impossible odds as a challenge to be overcome rather than a reason to surrender. They had stolen one child from one human. The price they paid for that mistake echoed across the galaxy, a warning to any who might threaten Earth's children in the future. And in a small apartment on Earth, Sarah Chen sat with her father and watched the stars through their window, knowing that somewhere out there, other children were waiting to be rescued by humans who would never stop fighting for family. The galaxy had learned to fear the deathworld and its children. The Empire had learned that some prices were too high to pay. And humanity had proven once again that no force in the universe was stronger than a parent's love for their child.